I believe we are now.
Yeah, I turned it on. So this is about the Okta rollout.
Excellent. Thanks, Sid. So going live for us with Okta would mean setting up, if you want, I'll just share my screen. Actually, it might be easier to demonstrate by sharing my screen on a couple of these elements. So I'm just going to bring up. So for those of you that haven't seen it yet, this is what the Okta dashboard looks like currently. So you can see that I've got a bunch of tabs and a bunch of applications in place at the moment. I'm just going to jump across to the admin portal side and to put some context around what going live means. You can see that we have here 555 users that are imported from Bamboo HR admin. This is something that happens as a twice daily event at the moment, where I'm actually reading in from Bamboo HR about all the employees that we have within the system. If I just go,
wait a second. We got 650 people on our team page. There's so many people still between starting and Bamboo, or what's happening?
So 555 are the people that have not been activated within Okta. So if I go into the Bamboo admin here, you can see that we've got 86 users that have been imported and confirmed, and we've got 555 users that need review to be imported.
Okay, sorry, that makes sense. And can we talk about team members, not employees?
Sorry, team members. So going live would mean taking those 555 team members and importing them to basically create our Okta accounts for them. As part of that account creation process, they will be populated within groups. Those groups are based on Bamboo HR departments, which we currently have 27 defined of. And based on those allocations, and also based on geography, applications from our applications list will be allocated to the dashboard that you saw at the start. Not all of the applications that we have here are 100% ready to go. There's quite a few in here that are actually set up as stubs. So there's still sort of, to be configured work that needs to be done. But for some of them to do the proper configuration, the authentication decision is an either or decision. So we either use a username password combination, or we use SAML or SSO and do a single sign-on through Okta. A lot of applications, just because of the way that they're set up, require you to choose one or the other. You can't have a hybrid configuration where you have both enabled. So as far as the full enablement of what we want to do with Okta is concerned, we've reached a point where we've enabled about as much as we can without getting some of that broad scale user adoption in place, so that we can flick the switch on being able to do some of the more sophisticated things around automated provisioning, single sign-on, getting some of the real advantages out of Okta. Might just pause here. Does anyone have any questions at this stage?
I think Sid's got a couple going on the dock.
Yeah, but they're not necessarily at this stage, so feel free to finish whatever you're going to talk about.
Okay, so I just wanted to put some context around what Go Live was. So one of the things as far as the agenda was concerned, probably the key decision that I want to try and get out of this meeting is an agreement from at this level about what a Go Live date would look like. And that Go Live date that I'm suggesting at the moment would be June 19th, which is only in a couple of weeks' time. The implications of going live as far as business impact is concerned would be negligible from a stopping people from doing their day-to-day work perspective. However, because we're going to have every team member receiving an activation account about Okta, there's probably going to be a lot of support and hand-holding that we'll need to do around that time and shortly afterwards for people that are setting things up and dealing with any of the unanticipated user scenarios that we may not have thought of or we might have covered in our getting started or user guides.
And Rob, one of the understandings that I have is some of the applications are all or nothing, right, in terms of how we integrate that. So Slack is one of those examples where we can't do a halfway kind of iterative deployment as an all or nothing. Is that correct?
That's correct. Well, Slack's an interesting one because Slack has two elements involved. One is the all or nothing element. The other element is that Slack has a licensing element that we have to discuss at some stage. A sort of a more simple example would be something like Periscope, where Periscope can be set up to enable just-in-time provisioning and SAML authentication. But for us to do that, we have to basically abandon the username and passwords that are already set up and then get everyone to click through and use Okta to do it that way. So, I mean, and there's a number of applications that are like that. Bamboo HR would be like that if we were to go down the SAML path. Greenhouse is like that. G Suite would be like that as well. Although with G Suite, there's some little hybridy stuff that we can do. So we can kind of do some of that in chunks. But most of the other applications that we would want to start moving across into SAML and single sign-on and being able to enable some of those sort of, automated provisioning processes are, generally speaking, they're pretty much all or nothing.
Okay, so we got the single login method and the dual login method apps, basically. And the single login method apps, they are like, that's what you refer to as all or nothing.
What do you mean by single or dual method? Sorry.
Single login method. Sorry for my pronunciation. So we need a word to refer to the apps that are all or nothing or not. So if you can log in both with username, password, and with Okta, we need a word for that. And we need a word for apps that that support only one or the other, where it's a hard switch. And we log nobody outside Okta can log in anymore. What are the words we use to refer to what type of application it is?
For the moment, for ease of use, let's just call the ones that are all or nothing. Let's just call them SAML apps. It's probably, I mean, it's not technically correct, but it's going to be the
SAML only apps.
Yep.
So SAML only apps. So have we added all the non-SAML only apps to Okta?
As far as the ones that I've been able to discover, yes. I won't say that I've added all of them because I'm sure that as we start this process and start going into other pockets of the business, we're going to uncover things.
Is there any other way in which we can iterate? Why do all the people have to be added at the same time? Can we just add 50 people at a time or something like that?
We could do that, but I don't know that necessarily makes the process any easier. I think that we're probably going to be, that would probably just prolong the complexity around some people being in and some people not being in. I don't see that there would be a value in staggering that by department. However, I'm willing to entertain it if we think that's going to be less impactful.
If you say go live, do you mean at that date we invite everyone and we switch the SAML only apps on?
No. So go live is only inviting people. My thought around that was that once we hit a threshold of people that have registered their Okta account, we can then start looking at flicking the switch on the SAML only applications. The theory being that if we've got somewhere around, say, 80% of people that have actually created an Okta account, the impact of flicking the switch to a SAML only application should be relatively small.
Yeah, and then 80%, but you also then have a lead time of announcing, right? When you hit
Correct.
80%, you announce, and then there's a lag. Okay. Yeah, I'm fine with it. So the question is, can we invite everyone to Okta? That's fine. Why don't we do that tomorrow?
We could do it tomorrow. The concern that I would have about doing it tomorrow is that will generate an awful lot of noise. And I don't know that we've necessarily prepared people for that. I guess I worry that if we do that tomorrow, we'd have a lot of people coming to us tomorrow and saying, what is this? Is it phishing? Is it spam? Is it
Okay.
You know, what's the purpose of it? I think we need to do a little bit more education, maybe through a couple of company calls, and set sort of a bit of a timeline around that.
Yeah, so that's fine. I think it should be called out on company calls. Make sure you don't spend 5 minutes in a company call talking about it, but you just point, this is the handbook page, we're turning people on. This is a video of me talking about it. And here's the support channel you can use, or here's a Slack channel, or whatever is needed.
Okay, great. I guess the other reason for asking that question is in the issue that's related to this agenda, I was looking to spark a discussion on anything else that we would consider to be preconditions before flicking that switch. We'll need to make updates in the handbook in numerous places, and we'll need to also update things like our onboarding issue, because it will significantly change a number of the things that we do from an onboarding process. That's still work in progress as far as I'm concerned. There's probably a week or two of work that needs to be done just to finalize exactly what that looks like, and just test it, essentially. So that's kind of why I was giving us that extra bit of lead time as well, so that we can call out some of those final activities that we might need to do before going live, so that we cause essentially less confusion and we can try and make this smoother. However, I'm happy to move faster if we decide that that makes more sense.
I don't think it makes sense to first onboard someone in the old process and then say, oh, well, we're switching you to Okta. So I would first, if you want to change something, you start with the new people. You first make sure all the new people get into Okta, and only then you switch out the existing people.
Yeah. Carol, can I check with you? My understanding from an onboarding perspective is that the onboarding issue is normally created somewhere between 2 to 3 weeks before the employee starts. Is that correct?
Yeah, they prep them before that, and then they just message the person the day around when they join, but it is prepared in advance. So we can look at where they're up to and use that then as a starting point, if that makes sense. That probably would be, I think they're probably 2 weeks out now at this stage, so that would be mid-June.
Yeah, but don't worry too much. Like, don't go in existing onboarding issues. First thing, change the onboarding template. From then on, all the new hires will get. And then if you convert people in the company before, and you still have some old onboarding templates where people are going to, that's not the end of the world. So I wouldn't wait for that. But you do want to first change the onboarding template and only then switch the whole company over. That makes sense to me, that you don't make the problem worse.
Correct. So that's what I think that was something that drove the whole, let's go with the date around 2 weeks time, because that's a trigger for me to fix up some of the onboarding stuff ASAP. But also to make sure that we've got enough time to make the appropriate changes to the handbook, so that when people do go start to look at what they need to do, that might be a change of process, that we've got we're already ahead of the game as far as the handbook's concerned.
So I wouldn't ask us to set a date. I would just say, hey, have at least 2 consecutive company calls where you call this out.
Okay.
And then go ahead.
And Rob, I know you're in APAC time zone, so I'll take the action to make 2 company call announcements at the regular time.
Okay.
So if you can change the onboarding next week, then we can even and you put it on the company call end of next week, we can start doing it by Monday. So not the coming Monday, but the Monday after that.
Okay.
But it depends on your speed. But don't ask us for a date. It's ask us for the conditions, and then just announce it when you're ready.
Okay. No, that's fine. All right. I'll look at that, and if we're happy for that to happen, then I'll probably still target around June 19th, just because I think that from me mapping out the tasks that's I would have
fine. What I want to prevent is that you feel like you have to have another call with us to determine the date when the date shifts earlier or later. Like, it's your date, you do the work.
Fantastic. Thanks, Sid. Appreciate that. Okay.
Robert, just a quick question in terms of supporting people, given the fact that, yeah, you're in APAC and, you know, we have all the different regions. Are you planning on using a Slack channel, or how are people going to get support with it?
So for the beta, we've been doing that through a Slack channel and through an issue. With going to production, I think we'll probably do the same. One of the questions that I did call out in the issue is what support mechanisms we would and should set up sort of for the initial tasks, as well as looking forward. Looking forward, we're going to have to start thinking about what an ongoing support model looks like for this. But for day one, I think we might need to leverage on IT ops particularly to assist us with having some availability to help out with any, you know, configuration or base configuration type issues.
Yeah, Robert, two things. I rename all the beta things to just Okta, and you can just announce it 2 consecutive times, and then just say that you'll start inviting people throughout the next 2 weeks, or that you'll start inviting people, and that you're not sure when people will be invited, and just invite the first 50 on the first day, and then see what breaks, and then invite another 50, and then invite 100. There's no single thing that forces you to, as far as I know, that forces you to invite 500 people at the same time and have them all hit the same problem. So I wouldn't force yourself in that position, unless I'm missing something.
We can do it that way. There's some degree of automation in the way that Okta works that would make it easier probably to turn everything on at once. Turning them on in sort of batches like that would be a manual activity on my side.
Okay, otherwise you can just press a button. Okay.
Yeah, I can understand the logic in doing it, but maybe that just means that we pick maybe we pick a particular department, or we pick a particular area and go with that, or a particular geography first.
Your pick, but if you're worried about people hitting things, that would be a way. So you got to weigh those 2 factors. What is going to be the most work?
All right, let me pause and think about that, and I'll come up with an alternate plan if we think that the big bang is not going to be the best way to move forward.
Yeah, or you do 100 manually and it goes okay, and then you do the rest of the company next day.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, just bringing up the issue. I'm just having a look and seeing what else we called out as far as checklist information was concerned, where we might want some feedback. Most of these are items for us to do. I don't know if you've got the issue there. I might just ask if you just want to have a quick look at the checklist items that we've got there and see if there's anything obvious that you think we're missing. And Carol and Walter, this is probably and Eric, this is probably something that, you know, having a few extra eyes on might really help me, because I have a certain visibility of the company, but you guys all probably will see this list from a totally different perspective to where I'm seeing it from.
Sure.
Yeah, I do want to. I think the one piece I want to kind of call out is the ongoing support pieces, and so we've got sort of called out the first few weeks what we're going to do for break fix pieces, but I want to make sure that, you know, before we sort of catch this, we've got a clear sense of what the workflows are, the way you've built it out, and make sure that we understand those, and those are meeting the requirements that we've laid out to get the work done on a sustaining basis. Doesn't necessarily have to land exactly to go live, but I do want to make sure that we've got an owner for building out that documentation, and that, you know, we get what we need to run the machine.
Yeah, I'm hoping that a lot of the machine will run itself once things are set up. But I guess the key point here is that turning this on is really just another phase of getting this properly set up. The configuration of particularly the turning on of some of these extra applications is still going to require some effort. And, you know, there'll be some bumps in the roads when we turn some of those on for sure. particularly some of the all or nothing type applications where people may not have seen or had visibility into what we're doing with Okta. And we'll end up having people coming up and saying, hey, why can't I log into Periscope, insert app here, and not necessarily realizing that the change has happened because maybe they missed it on the company call, or they missed the announcements that were going on in various channels. Again, we'll be, I'll over communicate as much as I can, but for some of these things, I'm guessing we'll inevitably miss people.
So that work, a lot of that stuff work carries on. I know, I gotta figure out what it was and come back to you then. Oh, I think the other piece, I should be writing this down, is adding new systems. Again, not a thing that we necessarily need on day one, but making sure that we've got sort of a clear understanding of, one, how this needs to fall into our vendor review process, and saying like, okay, we need to confirm that we're Okta compatible in some way, shape, or form, or otherwise approved. And then also have sort of clear idea of who has to set this stuff up. Not has to, but right, Robert, you've got most of the experience in terms of getting new applications configured for this. We don't necessarily, although we could, want to tap you every time a new platform comes on board. So just making sure that we at least know who we want to talk through as we continue to add, tools to our stack.
Yeah, I think any tool that we're adding to our stack that's that's web-based or SaaS-based that doesn't have compatibility with Okta, that should be an instant flag to ask why. In some cases, we can custom build something, but for the most part, you can actually search on the Okta website to see if they've got an app compatibility engine that you can search on. I absolutely think that we need to be putting that in as sort of a key part of that sort of vendor security review process. And I've been working with our compliance people to say, hey, we definitely want to have that being a key part of what we do as far as our security and compliance checklist is concerned.
Cool.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions or concerns or comments about the things we're talking about on the checklist, or thoughts about things that would be improvements?
I think it's pretty comprehensive. I'm going to run it by our ops team, Cassiana, Trevor, and Nadia, because they may see something from their day-to-day that I'm not seeing. So I'll do that on Slack now, and I'll come back to you as soon as they respond.
Fantastic. And I guess we can iterate within the issue. So if they can throw some feedback in there, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, perfect.
I guess the only other question that I had, going back to looking at the agenda, from an application perspective, are there any specific applications that anyone would like to call out that we really should have bedded down before go live? I can go back into Okta and show you the applications that we've captured and talk to any of them in particular. But I wanted to hear if there were any that we wanted to particularly highlight or catch.
So what you're referring to, Rob, is the baseline, right, for all team members?
Baseline applications or applications within particular departments where we would think that having those applications ready on day one would be highly beneficial.
Yeah, I think for sales, definitely Salesforce. I can't see a sales team member not using Salesforce, so that's a must-have. not sure about marketing. What's the day one for marketing?
I've gone through most of the marketing applications with Jennifer Cords, and we're set up and ready to go with as many of them as we could do for day one. So I feel reasonably comfortable with marketing. Salesforce is one that we need to do. Salesforce is one of those nice hybrid applications where we can set up Okta to do SAML and single sign-on type functions without impacting current login processes. So there's all sorts of interesting and weird things that you can do with Salesforce. So that is one that I definitely want to be focusing on within the next 2 weeks.
So I had a question. I put it further up, question around departments, but I just wanted to make sure, Carol, do we feel good about the department data that lives within Bamboo right now? So a lot of these will be inheriting permissions and app sets from that department level data. Are we able to maintain that? Is it good right now? Do we expect it to stay that way? How are we doing on that front?
I'm saying yes, because as far as I know, we're comfortable with the integrity of it, but I'll validate with Brittany. It gets updated, feeds in from Greenhouse when people get hired, and then if anyone's being promoted or if they're transferring, that gets updated. So presumably, and if you're saying it transfers, Robert, every twice a day, it should update Okta as well. But it's a good call out. Let me just validate that, and we can I can confirm.
I put a question in before Walter added to mine under 6. So where's the department definition? What constitutes a department? What is a sub-department? Is that known anywhere?
Yes, it is. It's the departments the departments that we're getting in Okta are the departments that are defined within Bamboo HR.
Yeah, I get that, but what are the departments in Bamboo? What's our definition for a department? Is sales a department, or is customer success a department, or is implementation engineering customer success a department? How do we define that? I think the list is coming from finance. So I've already put this on my agenda with Paul. I just want to make sure that it wasn't defined anywhere in the handbook.
Not that I've come across.
Oh, I'm pretty sure in Bamboo HR, security, for example, would be a department. I don't think Bamboo HR has any more granularity than that. That's my understanding. So sub-departments are not defined in Bamboo HR. Is that correct?
Yeah, but we don't even have a definition of what we call a department. It's kind of arbitrary, whatever finance makes of it. So I want to get closer there, but I'll ask finance to do that because they seem to be in charge of how they define departments. And I think it's an accounting metric for GitLab.
Okay. Sid, for your reference, I'm just going to share my screen again for a second. If you have a look at the departments, it's actually the groups that you see here in green, they are literally what I am importing from Bamboo HR. Yeah. So if those names are meaningful to you, hopefully that helps you.
Yeah, I have a vague understanding of what it is. So I'm not asking what are departments. I'm just, so we'll also have to change departments from as we get bigger. We're going to split them up. How does that happen? Who decides that? Where's that change made? How do I make a merge request to split the department up? Right now, all of that is not possible because no one's put the departments in the handbook. So there's no change process. And as we evolve as a company, they're going to change, and there's no way to change them now. There's no way for you to be aware of that change.
Got it.
Okay, and Sid, it sounds like you're saying the DRI should be finance for defining those departments.
Right now, I think finance defined them. So I already put it on my agenda with Paul. I just asked for, hey, is this defined anywhere? Did I miss it? I did a search for it earlier because I wanted to refer to departments and an update I made to the company structure page. And so I was looking around for them, couldn't find them myself.
Okay.
we gotta make sure this sync with our org structure, because there are things like product development, which finance cares about because that's R&D and that's important budgetary. But R&D is all of product management and all of my organization, but not support. And so it's sort of a synthetic group within the company. So if finance dictates them wholly, they won't actually map to how people think of them. And we need to have some taxonomy that works for both purposes.
Yeah, Eric, that's going to be one of the ongoing challenges when it comes to automation for some of the application roles, because some of them aren't going to map easily to those departments. I think you and I had a talk at one stage about sub-departments being potentially thrown in there, and that possibly being something that was useful for that reason. But I mean, that has its own challenges in itself.
Yeah, I think what we probably find out is that we have to split up a few things. So create a couple of more departments to get to where we want to go, because it has to work both for finance and both for authentication authorization. So we're using one thing for two things, so we probably have to get a bit more granular. But step one is adding it to the handbook so we can at least discuss it.
I'll put my recommendation in the doc, and that could be a starting point for whoever's going to do the seminar.
Okay. From my perspective, I think we've got answers to most of the questions that I had coming into this meeting. Are there any other discussion points that we need to discuss, or can we wrap this up early?
Perhaps one last thing is that we had a security-related discussion about whether we should publish in the handbook all of the role entitlements. And there's a lot of concern about making that information public, because some of the roles that we have, such as SREs and DBREs and also security automation, have a high degree of privileged access. So it effectively gives an attacker who's conducting recon on which user account to target additional ammunition, and makes that process quicker. So I want to get people's thoughts here, make sure we're all on the same page, that we're not necessarily going to put privileged access information on the handbook.
I think we can put it on the handbook, make it public. Yes, you can find out who has more access. We have pretty obvious function names. It's not going to be a big thing. Like maybe I get 80% of the way there just by looking at people's title, but now I know explicitly. It's not like, I don't think it's a defense mechanism. I don't think it's, yes, you're the senior director of security, you have access to a lot of systems, so I want to breach you. I'm the CEO, I have access to a lot of systems. I think in all, making it part of the handbook is going to put it under greater scrutiny by people. Like, hey, should that person even have that level of access? So there's drawbacks. It makes it easier to do recon. I don't think it's the hump is big enough to warrant the lack of organization and transparency that hiding it would mean.
Okay. I just want to make sure everyone's on the same page one way or another. So we can go ahead and publish all of that in the handbook. It's fine.
Cool. Thanks, Kathy.
Feel free to disagree with me, Kathy.
Well, you know my opinion. I don't want to help attackers any more than we already are. So, but it's a risk that we can take on if you're okay with that. So I'll leave that with you.
Yeah, well, it always depends how big is the risk. I think my assumption is that people can infer 80% of that just from titles. What do you think of that assumption?
I don't think that's the wrong assumption at all. However, your title doesn't necessarily tell me that you have admin workspace access on Slack.
Exactly. And that's something I shouldn't have. So someone should get rid of that. So that's the stuff we want in there. And we should look at that and like, hey, now we tell people something that is not obvious, but then it's like, who else should Sid even have Slack access? And I want to get rid of it. But today, Highwire asked, like, hey, or yesterday, they asked, can you add these people to this channel? It needs to be a Slack admin. I don't know the other Slack admins. So I'm not going to ask even to remove my access, because now I have a problem because I don't know who can do it. And it wasn't a situation where I was going to do an access request or something else. So take away, I should have way less access. If I look at the amount of access I have, that's not good. So take away a lot of my access and make sure that that list is something that we're like, yeah, it totally makes sense. This is the minimal list of access we can give people. Or not the minimal, but it makes sense. And for sure, Sid should have a lot less access.
Okay. I guess the only other vector that exposing the applications that we're using is some sort of a side channel based attack where they come in through one of those applications to exploit information. By publishing it there, we're kind of announcing to the world that we're using those applications. So if there's a vulnerability in that space, that then can be used to gather data. So that would be the only additional vector that I can see coming out by us publishing an applications list. We already published that to a certain extent with the tech stack that we're publishing. So
yeah, we have a tech stack. We have a tech stack on the internet. I was on stage yesterday talking about us using Slack. I tried for a long time in the handbook to say chat instead of Slack. I've given up on that battle. It's so we're going to leak to every pore what stuff we're using. So I don't think we're set up we have to kind of plug too many holes to get there. It's not just this hole. We're leaking this to so many different other vectors that, yeah, you're going to find out we use Google Docs because we share presentations on our blog the entire day. If there is something super high value that we think we should not talk about, I'm open to that. But like, what's our highest value target going to be? It's going to be Volt. We're going to talk about that. Yes, we're going to blog about that till this a lot because it's going to be part of our product. So I don't see any targets we can kind of hide and not talk about.
Yeah, I mean, production DB, for example, where all of the customer private repo data is stored. Obviously, the DBREs have admin access to that. But besides them, who else, right? I don't know that I want to make that information public because that's a very, very, very hot topic. And putting on a customer's hat, if I were a customer and I saw that you were disclosing where my info is and who has admin access on that, I'd be a little worried.
Let's opt for transparency and then see whether customers complain. A lot of our customers say, hey, first, the response might also be, does that person have access? That doesn't make any sense. And we're like, yeah, that really doesn't make any sense. And we change it. I think that's going to be a response. Like you said, you're telling me like I shouldn't have Slack admin access. I totally agree. If I would breach this company, I'd go to Slack. First of all, it's been breached a couple of times. Second of all, people trust a lot. It's like our default back channel. We're going to make this recording public, so consider that a leak of vulnerability. But I shouldn't have admin access for sure. So that list should be something we're proud of, that people hold us accountable for. And if it becomes a big customer problem, I'd be happy to reevaluate. But I think in general, if I look at other companies, I'm more worried if I can find a lot of information about a company than if I can. So let's see how it goes. I'm very open to reopening that conversation. My guess is that customers are going to point out problems where we have too much privilege to people, and that's a great back pressure.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that support, and we'll operate at that level right now, and then as we get more and more large enterprise customers on board, there will probably be differing opinions and things will change, but I'm glad you're open to discussing this later as well.
Yep, things will change. We'll have more government auditors come in, and if you host a web server, you don't want to leak the version number, even though you can find that out. So I'm aware that there's some obscurity that might help. Let's see how far let's see what the right balance is.
Okay.
Cool. Any other questions, comments, concerns, or are we ready to wrap this up? All right, sounds like I can give 5 to 7 minutes back to everyone's day.
Thanks, Robert.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Cheers.